I tried.
Yeah, see, the screen still is frozen for me. I can hear you, but I can't see shit.
Oh, dude, yeah, you gotta. Oh, bro, my apology. I forgot to do something for you. This is
Screen
no.
share.
There you go. Yep.
And we're not gonna be able to pull it up, I guess. So we can just just text it to me, and then we'll just rattle it off. We'll just rattle it off, just us. That way, I can at least see the screen,
Yeah.
even if it's not the mock draft.
So we had so many frames drop, a little choppy but improving. Guys, this is a test week with the new stream. I'm still work in progress trying to figure out what glitches we have and why. But again, it's a work in progress. Thank you for everyone who's, sticking around and everything. I mean, we are, 25 minutes deep into this thing, so it's not like the end of the world. We've been able to do decent time with it, but let's get right into the rest of this mock that has been interrupted so many times. Josh Allen has been announced as the Madden 24 cover athlete, which is surprising. We'll talk about that probably near the end of the show, but let's run through the rest of this first round. Jarris Walker to the Pistons. We had 6, I believe it was, the Orlando Magic take Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
Then 7, we have ourselves Asar Thompson because they need those wings. Even though some people are saying it's going to be Anthony Black, I think Anthony Black's a lock to the Wizards. Jazz take Taylor Hendricks for front court help.
Surprising, can I say one thing? It was very surprising when we looked at the workout list and we did not see Anthony Black worked out for the Wizards, especially considering when I was interviewing him at the Combine, it was only Wizards reporters talking to him about playing in Washington and other things. So that was very interesting to know that they didn't actually work him out, even though what I thought seemed like a lot for him to go to
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I still think
Orlando Magic never worked out Paolo Banchero.
No, they did not.
They never worked out Paolo Banchero.
They did not work out Paolo
attended they attended his workouts and like his pro days and whatever, but they never brought him in for a workout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that, because I remember that being a storyline, because you remember on draft day, he flew up to be the number 1 projected odds on draft night.
Last minute. It was an hour before the draft started.
And then everyone was tweeting, they're like, why is he the number 1, favored guy now, even though they never worked him out?
Because they worked out Chet and they worked out Jabari Smith, but they didn't work him out. So that,
And then they came out and said that they had been watching him since December, and they had seen enough that they believed that they didn't even need to watch him work out because they knew who he was.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a one-on-one draft workout doesn't really tell the whole story because basketball is in the game of one-on-one. So workouts are great, but you really don't get much information from them. I saw a clip yesterday talking about Gilbert Arenas, how he was talking about how workouts don't mean shit because Jokic would struggle in a workout as a rookie because Jokic's strengths aren't played to in a one-on-one style workout. And for example, Kevin Knox had some amazing draft day workouts, and that's why.
Is that actually true?
He didn't say anything about Kevin Knox, but the Kevin Knox thing was true. And I saw Gilbert Arenas just talking about how workouts don't mean shit, and he was talking about Jokic and how Jokic's strengths wouldn't be shown in a workout. So
on the last day of the Combine when I was there, it was all the pro days, and literally this is when I talked to the scouts, and basically the pro days, for the most part, it's a controlled. It doesn't matter. From what I understood, the scout I was talking to was a European service scout, and it was kind of for guys like him because he's like, these guys aren't fucking getting drafted. He's like this guy was named Nick Ragavopoulos, and he's like, this guy, he's in the draft, but he's like, dude, this guy, he's like,
he's not getting drafted.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm watching this guy because he's like, this is the only time I'm going to get a chance to watch him work out. And I'm going to see if he would want to be interested playing D2 for one of the teams that we provide scouting services for, So there's and he was telling me but most the pro days, dude, there probably was less than 30 people watching each pro day.
Yeah, because it's not that big of a deal, all things considered. So
let's move on.
It was surprising they didn't work him out, but.
Yeah, but let's move on right here. We got Bilal Coulibaly going 10, and we fought over this one. I mean, there was a little bit...
Scroll back up. We got to talk about pick 9. We got to talk about pick 9 first.
Oh,
we got to talk about
Taylor Hendrick falls there because all the other teams don't necessarily need front court help. So some team could trade up because they want to get Taylor Hendricks. But if no team trades up, I see Taylor Hendricks falling here to a team because Jarace Walker would be picked before him by any other team that would want front court help. And then it would be Taylor Hendricks. But the teams that would take front court help would take Jarace Walker because he would fall there. It seems like how we had it play out here. So the Jazz are the first team because they probably see Taylor Hendricks as a, ceiling, probably a similar player to what Jonathan Isaac was, maybe a little not as long. And then floor, he's Chris Boucher that year when Chris Boucher was a Six-Man of the Year candidate.
Yeah, and they would probably rather take him to come in and probably help them team right away. I mean, Koulibaly could also go here too. But,
yeah, Koulibaly's a guy who's flown up the draft boards. He's the J-Dub, Jalen Williams from Santa Clara of this year's draft.
Taylor Hendricks just makes too much sense here.
Because his floor, when I say Chris Boucher, is he ends up not being quick enough to be that perimeter defender that we think to be like that similar Jonathan Isaac defender. Then he becomes a Chris Boucher guy who can guard 4 and 5, be this 3-and-D big. Ceiling, he's athletic enough and mobile and laterally quick enough, guard 1 through 5, a la Jonathan Isaac when he was healthy.
Yeah.
Now let's move.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, and it's a good pick. Now I have Bilal Koulibaly because Tim Cato of The Athletic, beat writer for the Dallas Mavericks, says they're not going to take Grady Dick because he's too reminiscent of what the Donnie Nelson ran front office would have taken. And they're trying to find more wings like Josh Green, as they believe, and a lot of people around the league believe that Josh Green is the modern archetype of the 3-and-D wing. That's why they traded away Dorian Finney-Smith, and they're trying to move on from Reggie Bullock because they believe Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith are the old school type of 3-and-D wings archetype that they're still, serviceable, but they're more off the bench guys because they're not as athletic or, versatile as a guy like Josh Green.
And they're a little bit less comfortable with the ball in their hands than Josh.
Yeah. So Bilal Koulibaly follows the modern 3-and-D archetype. Guy is, as much as you want to say, he's young and all that, he's technically NBA ready, just played, was the second best player on the best team in France. And
yeah,
there's a reason. Then Grady Dick falls to Orlando, which Orlando.
Yeah, we this was one that we fought back and forth on and we're torn on because we
did rock paper scissors shoot to decide it. The way these picks were decided right here was a rock paper scissors shoot 2 out of 3.
This was very hard to decide, and I was like, oh, Cyro just wants to see Grady Dick go to the Magic because it'd be good for KU and for the Magic.
No, but okay, but seriously,
that's why I said it.
Seriously, though,
all things considered, it makes sense.
It makes sense, okay? As much as you guys hate it, it makes sense. Now, Cason Wallace, they need a backup point guard, Oklahoma City, so we have Oklahoma City.
Defense first, backup point guard. He just makes too much sense in this spot.
Exactly.
Just
Toronto
like
needs
this
shooting.
Next one.
I could see Toronto because Gary Trent's leaving and Fred VanVleet's probably leaving. That Toronto right here instead of taking Jordan Hawkins, because Cason Wallace makes sense with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They need a backup point guard to relieve Shea and Josh Giddey and play with the other one when the other one sits, and also bring some defense. Now moving to Raptors, I said highest potential guy right here is Nick Smith Jr. Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent are expected to leave. We took Jordan Hawkins because they need 3-point shooting. That's what they desperately need. But I would not be surprised if they take Nick Smith as the highest potential guy if they end up, because they are still undecided if they're going to rebuild or not.
This is the best pick for them, though. This is the pick that just makes. This is the
pick
that I.
If before this pick comes up, they trade away Pascal or OG or both of them, I would not be.
If they're tanking, then yeah. I would not.
They're taking the highest potential guy then.
This pick, Jordan Hawkins to the Raptors, is the best fit of any player in the entire draft. This pick makes more sense than any other pick that we have talked about so far up to this point. There's just no way he's not a Raptor if he's still on the board right now.
No, I agree.
But, there's just no way. But yeah, if the Raptors decide that they're going to rebuild, maybe they go Nick Smith because of the upside. It'll be interesting.
I also want to say, if for some reason Jordan Hawkins is off the board, then they would take the next best shooter, which is Jet Howard, if they're not rebuilding. Okay, we have Keontae
Yes.
George going to the Pelicans because Eric Gordon was there for so many years and he was just such a perfect fit. Keontae George works there, and because he's a very similar
Deontay
player
George
to
is
Eric.
not the same. He's not the same type of player because he's a worse shooter, but he's a better ball handler and off the dribble scorer, which would help the Pelicans.
But similar defender to what Eric Gordon was, and that's not even what I was. That it's not even the whole argument I was giving. Look, Kyra Lewis Jr. They're going to move on from him. He just didn't work out.
He didn't work out.
And their starting backcourt is C.J. McCollum and Brandon Ingram, with their backup right now being Dyson Daniels. They traded away Devontae Graham. So by drafting Keontae George, now you have your backup backcourt for C.J. McCollum and Brandon Ingram being Dyson Daniels.
It's good for the rotational minutes when those guys are hurt. Guys are hurt, because they will be, and the Pelicans will have injuries, so it'll be important to actually have guys who can play off the bench. So having a Keontae George, Dyson Daniels backcourt, for example, if Ingram and McCollum miss time, which they probably will at some point, that's a good thing for the Pelicans, especially because this team right now, if healthy, is a playoff team. There's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, they're going to have to clean house in the front office and the coaching staff. So they need somebody who can help them, and that's Keontae George.
Now
we've got Hood Schifino going next at 15.
I do believe that the Atlanta Hawks will trade this pick just because they're not working out any top 30 prospects. They're working out second round guys.
We talked about this. Yes, we talked about this when making this.
So, but this seems like a pick that they would attach with either John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, or Clint Capella, whoever they decide to trade this offseason to trade for a player. But if they were to keep the pick, Jalen Hood Schifino can play 1 through 3. He fits what they need. He can play next to Trey. He can play next to DeJounte. He can play next to DeAndre Hunter. It just fits versatility-wise and kind of fits. The only other player I could see him taking here is Nick Smith. If Quinn Snyder goes, I think Nick Smith can be my Donovan Mitchell. But I don't really see that. So then we go over here. Nick Smith goes to the Utah Jazz. Jet Howard goes to the Lakers just because he seems like a Lakers pick and they need three-point shooting. Rain Rupert's defense and ball handling skills are probably something Eric Spoelstra loves, and he probably
his passing upside and playmaking upside is great for the team.
Yeah, and he probably looks at Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley probably look at him and like, we can teach you to shoot. Noah Clowney,
you'll be our Jimmy Butler.
Yeah,
if everything goes right, you'll be our Jimmy Butler.
Noah Clowney will be developed by Draymond Green and Kevon Looney to be the next Kevon Looney. Bree Sensabaugh is just everywhere, everyone. This just makes sense for him to go to Houston. We've changed up the Nets picks for the first time. Derek Lively, as much as I'm not a big fan of his, he's been flying off the boards. I really still believe he's going in the 20s. I can't see him going top 20. He's going to go in the 20s if he does go in the first round.
Yeah.
Nets pair him up with Claxton and Sharp, and then they also get themselves.
I think this is the best spot for him.
Yeah. Or the Kings. Or the Kings.
Early 20s. Yeah, or the Kings. Or the Kings.
And or the Clippers. Or the Clippers at the end of the first. But
Maxwell Lewis was the highest rated prospect that the Nets worked out.
And the reason
prospect on the big boards.
And the reason why we also have him take Maxwell Lewis a few years ago, the same exact front office took Pepperdine guy Kessler Edwards at the beginning of the second round. They have some experience with Pepperdine guys. I actually asked Maxwell Lewis a question. I was like, hey, because I think he did say his freshman year he was with Kessler.
Yeah. Maxwell Lewis, they didn't really play together.
They didn't play. No, but what I asked him, the question I asked him, I was like, having Kessler Edwards been drafted before you, did that establish like a blueprint or kind of a roadmap of what you need to work on and do to be able to get drafted? And he did say that. He's like, yeah, seeing what Kessler was good at and what Kessler did allowed me to know what I needed to do. Because I said it was like the actual phrasing I said, having a teammate like Kessler, I know you guys only shared I think I said you guys shared one season. You're like, yeah, my freshman year. And I was like, yes, only sharing a season with him. Did that allow you to know that there was a blueprint or roadmap to follow to make it to the NBA from a school like Pepperdine that might not be the biggest basketball, mecca? And he's like, yeah, it gave me an idea of what I needed to work on, transition, playing both sides of the ball, making sure my
another thing I'm going to add on to that is his coach actually has been Lorenzo Romar. That's a guy who's been around NBA circles for a while, obviously longtime Washington coach. So having a coach like that as well really, I think, helps him develop what he needed to develop. And obviously with Kessler Edwards kind of coming in, it's like, hey, Pepperdine can actually produce good talent. If the talent's there, they'll be able to translate. And what does Maxwell Lewis do? He's a phenomenal three-point shooter, and he plays great defense. So the Nets, it's good value here. He's the highest prospect they worked out. It just makes too much sense.
And
we've got Colby Jones. We've got Colby Jones going 23rd. This is another guy who is he's pro ready right now. He'll come in and help the Blazers and play good rotational minutes right away. He's a Swiss Army knife almost. He averaged like 14, 5, and 5 last year for Xavier.
He's literally Josh Hart. He's Josh Hart mixed with Draymond Green. I've said that because the reason I keep throwing that Draymond Green comparison in there is sometimes I don't know if Colby Jones is going to be offensively. Defensively, he's more like Josh Hart. Offensively, I don't know if he's a wing version of Draymond or if he's Josh Hart. And what I mean by that is the scoring. Does he have the shot creation?
He's a better shooter than Draymond.
Right? But I don't know if he's the scorer that Josh Hart is. Josh Hart's an underrated scorer, underrated.
Yeah,
I think he's just as good as a ball. I think he's just as good as a ball handler, passer, all that stuff. But I don't know if he has the acumen, the offensive arsenal to create his own shot like Josh Hart can when needed.
Yes, and we shall see.
That's why I say he's a Josh Hart, Draymond Green.
Yeah, when Josh Hart was at Villanova, Josh Hart was one of like 3 guys who was going to get the ball a lot. And it's
Josh Hart averaged 20 in 20 games for the Trailblazers last year.
The offense that Xavier ran, granted, lended itself a little bit less to individual guys taking over and scoring than Villanova's offense when Josh Hart was there. And Xavier had like 4 guys averaging like 13 or more points. They spread the ball around a lot. So maybe we just didn't get to see Colby Jones' scoring as much in terms of like his individual talent to score as he doesn't have it. I think that's what it is. I think we just didn't see it enough. But you never know. You might be right. But either way, it's a good pick for the Blazers at 23.
No, I agree. And it's something that interests me right here. I think it's a great pick. And they had Josh Hart last year, so that's a good. Even though we'll talk about it in a second that Damian Lillard came out and said that they want to use all their assets to get players. Let's just run through the rest of this mock real quickly. Chris Murray going over here to the Sacramento Kings. They pulled the good old Phoenix Suns when they got Markieff and Marcus Morris. Kobe Buffkin goes to the Memphis Grizzlies. They had Kenny Chandler.
If Derek Lively is still on the board, he will go to the Kings at 24.
Yeah, and at 26, we had Leonard Miller going to... Was that the Pacers? And then Olivier Maximus-Prosper goes to the Hornets. Dariq Whitehead goes to, who is it at 28?
Oh, Duke. And from Duke, did you just see what happened to the Jazz, by the way? Sorry. And did you see that they announced another foot surgery today? So he should be back by camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, another surgery for his foot. And that's another foot injury that he also had at the beginning of the year. So Dariq Whitehead is a high upside pick. And I think at this late in the round, the Jazz probably be like, well, we already have Nick Smith, who's a high upside guy who had injury problems.
Mm-hmm.
Dariq Whitehead is the same kind of, he's not as high upside as Nick Smith, but he's still a high upside guy who had injury problems. And the Jazz, again, they're in no rush to win right now. They want to build assets. They want to have good players, and he would fit that.
And then Pod goes to the Pacers. Pod goes to the Pacers, and he just fits what they're trying to build there, as he's just a guy who can play multiple positions for them.
His performance at the Combine, actually, because like here's the thing, he only averaged like 4 assists last year or 3 assists last year for Santa Clara, but he was also averaging like 19 and 8 because he needed to score. Whereas like in the Combine game that we watched, he almost had a triple double, and he really showed his facilitating ability.
Last guy of the first round was James Nanji. He's kind of the Ismail Kamagate of this year's draft, who got drafted at the end of the first by the Denver Nuggets and is a draft and
high upside pick. He may not be a draft and stash though.
I know he may not be, but he plays for Barcelona. Now we got with the first pick of the first round being Imani Bates. You might be thinking why we did this. He's from Michigan. Detroit. He's actually kind of like the highest ranked guy on Detroit's workouts. Players that they've worked out.
Yeah, Detroit is another team that it did not work out many guys in this range. They worked out a few guys at the top.
It just makes sense. They have the first pick in the second round. It just makes sense. Okay.
It might be a reach, but
it's a second round pick. It's a second round pick.
This team has no rush to win now. This team is
Yeah.
not in a position to win next year or for the next 4 years for that matter.
So I think
they
it just
need upside.
yeah. And then we go over here, Indiana taking Jaime Jaquez. Then we have Marcus Sasser going to San Antonio because Trey Jones might leave. Then we have Charlotte taking Gregory Jackson. Just he went to South Carolina, another pick that kind of works out right there. Andre Jackson, a point forward who fits perfectly and will be the
The highest ranked player that Boston worked out was Andre Jackson.
Yeah.
He's a point forward, Swiss Army knife player. He only
Williams
averaged like 7 points a game in college, but he averaged like 7, 7, and 7 almost, which that's an insane stat line for somebody who never really shot the ball.
And he'll be the Grant Williams replacement.
He's a more athletic Grant Williams. And Grant Williams showed that guys who suck at shooting threes in college can become good three-point shooters in the NBA. So
we have Orlando here taking Amari Bailey because I expect Cole Anthony or one of the other guards, but more than likely Cole Anthony be gone and probably Gary Harris as well. Then we have Oklahoma City taking Adama Sanogo as a big, as a backup. Sacramento takes Julian Phillips. I would love Tristan Vukovic to go in the first, but it doesn't seem like he'll go. So at 39, we have Charlotte taking him to pair up with Mark Williams.
Great value at 39.
Another great value is Taquavian Smith, who's the Bones Highland replacement for Denver.
Yeah, he probably should have came out last year, but it's still a good value pick. He'll fit. He'll replace Bones and be a nice pickup for the Nuggets.
Julian Strother goes to the Hornets. They just get more shooting. DC takes Tosan because that's who they've worked out. And with Michael
Tosan has been rising up draft boards because they value the Swiss Army knife tools and the athleticism.
And you have to understand the new front office comes from the Clippers, the Hawks, and the Thunder. So you got to look. He kind of fits Travis Schlecht, Will Dawkins, and Michael Winger's players that teams have drafted. Jalen Wilson goes to, I believe that is Portland. He's another Josh Hart type guy that they can pair up with Colby Jones, as Colby Jones probably more of a small forward, power forward, while Jalen Wilson's more of a power forward, small forward. Two guys who are win now players that Damian Lillard probably would like them to draft if they were to keep those picks. Jordan Walsh, that's who the Spurs worked out in this range. Kind of seems like a Spursy pick. Seth Lundy, love this guy. He knows his role. He's a 3-and-D guy. And we have
Seth Lundy really improved his performance at the combine, and also the Spurs. Or who's this? Memphis. Memphis also worked him out. He's one of the guys that they worked out in this range. Another guy, Ben Shepherd.
Then we also have LA taking Oscar Schwebe because Donovan Ham probably loves that rebounding. Clippers take Kobe Brown because that screams who they want. Cavaliers need wing depth, Keontae Johnson. Oklahoma City takes CD Sissoko because that's just a good, high upside, low risk in the second round. Bobby Clipman is another guy, goes to Brooklyn. Similar thing what we said about CD.
Project. Bobby Clipman is a project. He's a big project, but the Nets already took a few guys to help their rotation by taking Maxwell Lewis and Derek Lively in the first round.
And
so
then they
can have a guy become a prospect.
Jordan Miller, win now guy for Sacramento. For Phoenix, my apology.
Jordan Miller is a guy who, even though he's a late second
round Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig.
He has a really good chance to actually play a good role. Yeah, he has a great chance to play a really good role.
And the Suns, guess what player is a free agent for them? Torrey Craig. So Jordan Miller could be a cheap replacement. Isaiah Wong to Minnesota. Jalen Noel's a free agent. And Jordan McLaughlin, come on. And then you got Tracy Jackson Davis to Sacramento, who needs a backup big. 55.
They worked him out as well.
Ricky Council goes there. They worked him out. Jalen Slausson's a guy that Memphis worked out. Then you got yourself 57 is that Washington?
These are the 2-4. 57 and 58 are the 2 forfeited picks.
Okay, so then we just straight to 59 and 60, which is Washington. And in the Milwaukee, we had Washington take Hunter Tyson because he fits the Corey Kispert.
And they also worked him out. And
they like that three-point shooting. They need more three-point shooting. So then we're going to go with the last pick. Milwaukee has time. Jalen Clark just fits right there. And that was our mock draft.
Jalen Clark, now granted, Jalen Clark, the last pick of the draft, he is injured. And that's why he's probably going to fall as far as he does in this draft. Jalen Clark would be a top 40 pick if he was not injured and he didn't have any questions. They're saying that he's probably going to be ready by December or January. He is the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. He shoots threes. He averaged 3 steals a game. The Bucks love that defense. The Bucks are probably going to draft him just to help out the rotation right away. and maybe some of their end of the bench guys leave and they need him to step up and play. It's just a Bucks pick. If you're
No,
picking the last pick of the draft, you have a guy who wouldn't be this far down the draft if he didn't get injured in the Pac-12 tournament. So
it
it's a
does
very
bring.
Bucksy pick.
It is a very Bucksy pick. And right now we're gonna switch topics over here, and I want to talk about James Harden with you. And James Harden is supposedly torn between going back home to, yes, a team called Houston Rockets, or staying with a team that has become home for him, the Philadelphia 76ers, especially that he supposedly really likes the hiring of Nick Nurse. Like, he's all for it.
Yeah.
So,
Which, if that was the Sixers' effort to keep him right there,
yeah, because,
let's bring in Nick Nurse.
yeah, and it brings up this, like, whole situation where you just kind of want to think, like, is this what they were trying to do? Or was it
This
not?
is what they were trying to do.